So
Yeah.
interesting, the shutdown, when we do the prepare, I think about being on the lookout. This is a really interesting concept. What causes that shutdown, that neurological reaction, right? Like the amygdala, the shutdown, the fear response. If you can work with the brain, the cortex. I learned this really early on. I was always interested in neurology and how the brain works.
Me
If we
too.
can get them, I know. Well, the apple
Mom
doesn't
like
fall.
daughter, I guess.
Yeah, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. But if you can get someone to think, it's hard to shut down. So
Yeah.
one of the things that we do for some of the kids that shut down is one, the silent goals: arrive early, prepare the whole thing in a fun way. It doesn't have to be prepare in a rigid way. Oh, we're going to hear, like, this could happen, like we're going to see this person, and I wonder if this happens, like in an upbeat, positive
Yeah.
way. Prepare. And sometimes it's creating the visuals, which could be game like for young children or goal like. So, and then how the parents bring the child or the teen into social communication or something, but they're on the lookout. I do it the I Spy. Let's see how many people, like, you're going to a family function. Let's see how many people ask me about what I'm doing this summer. So you're on the lookout.
Yeah.
You're looking out. Like, I wonder if Aunt Sally's going to wear a dress or pants today, because she
Yeah.
kind of dresses pretty funky. And so you look out. You're on the
Yeah.
lookout. You're on the lookout for common questions. You're on the lookout for fun things. You're on the
Yeah.
lookout for, is she wearing funny earrings or
Mm.
whatever? And by doing that, you're preventing the shutdown because you're
Yeah.
using your cognition.
Yeah.
That's why these games that you play, like you said with the cat, trivia questions, it's a focus on something. Also,
Yeah.
what questions could someone ask about a cat?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we also
What's his name? What kind of cat?
yeah, we also talk a lot about, like, real world goals and games and activities like that because real world is very predictable, right? If you go to restaurants or stores, you might those families that work with us, or if you look at our literature, a lot of times we'll talk about home, real world, and school because most of the time we're going out and about in the real world. And so the exact same thing, if there's families in here that we haven't worked with yet, one recommendation I have, especially if you have a younger child, is being on the lookout when you're going into stores because stores seem to be places that are very triggering for a lot of our kids, especially those kids that have sensory sensitivities. So, for example, we always say this at Communicamp, right? So where we live in many areas within the nation, but depending on who's listening to this, they might not know. There's a store called Target, and it's a very wide known store. And what's really nice about Target is they all the workers wear red shirts, and so that actually is something that we talk a lot about at Communicamp, that even though Target can be a little large, loud, lots of people, like Dr. Ray mentioned, obviously going off hours is helpful. But one of the things that I find a lot of my kids love is I'll say, okay, you have a task. When you go to Target, you're going to be on the lookout. You have to look for someone with a red shirt, right? And that kind of starts the process too. So that's definitely something to kind of get yourself moving and kind of just getting yourself more excited rather than that like shut down frozen look in a store.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Another is the emotional reactions. And as you said, we have a lot of kids, a lot of teens with sensory challenges, sensory processing difficulties. And what goes along with that is emotional dysregulation.
Hmm.
And so if you have a child that gets very irritable, frustrated, cries a lot, just kind of just like upset a lot, I would say, are they a sensory kid?
Yeah.
And what is causing that? Why are they dysregulated like that? And those kids, again, structure, consistency, routine, predictability in their home helps. But what are those triggers?
Yeah.
Hungry, tired, overstimulated, understimulated, not knowing what's happening and sudden changes in scheduling. These things can be really, really difficult for a lot of our kids. And so when these things occur, we want to understand some of those triggers for emotional dysregulation and try to address them. And these are things we see a lot in a lot of our kids, as I said, with sensory challenges. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, definitely. So, two things that I wanted to add. One is definitely this is a great opportunity to dive deeper into like what are those contributing factors because I would say that as you're mentioning, many kids with sensory challenges also experience a lot of emotion regulation challenges. Also, actually, a lot of individuals that have ADHD really have a lot of struggles with emotion regulation challenges. Some individuals on the spectrum have challenges with emotion regulation. So there's many different variety of diagnoses and other contributing factors that are definitely, important to kind of pay attention to. And so if you're not sure about maybe some of those underlying contributing factors, and again, we have so many other podcasts where we talk about additional diagnoses and how, we really try to monitor all of those things. We definitely recommend to listen to some of those podcasts. But I definitely would say that's important because, as Dr. E mentioned, one of the main things we do is, we track the triggers. So we have a parent trigger sheet where we really try to pay attention to like all the things she just mentioned. Like, when are we noticing that they're overwhelmed, that they're overstimulated, that they're hungry, that they're tired, that, maybe they're feeling jealous of their sibling, or, whatever it might be, right? There's so many variety of triggers. And so I think that that's really important. It was interesting because I worked with a family where I worked with them for a while, and it was interesting because the child, she was 7, she always got dysregulated after school. Always. She would come home every single 3:30 meltdown. And parents they tracked it. We did the look, listen, and learn, where we were really trying to understand it more. And turns out, this was later on in treatment, but turns out she actually had ADHD. She had underlying ADHD. And we learned more about that as we were talking about some of her underlying academic challenges, how she really had a lot of hard time. She was very inattentive and definitely very hyperactive, and couldn't, like I said, she was very stuck in school. So she would have those outbursts. Just the subtlety of shifting her evening routine, where parents initially, they were like, we have to get all the worksheets done before dinner, because she also had a younger sibling. And so we had to get everything done. The parents were very rigid and structured, and which again, structure helps. But we learned that just the subtlety of giving her 30 minutes of runaround time has made a tremendous shift in her emotion regulation. So just shifting by instead of starting with the worksheets where she's been literally stuck all day at school, she needed to just move around. She really just needed to move. And so that made a huge difference. And so what I would say is as you're listening, is thinking about what is it that, again, triggers my child. And also remember, for children, they don't have the verbal language to share maybe what's causing their shutdown, right? So I always say this, and I say this a lot at Communicamp, for those kids that have emotion regulation challenges, they're telling us something. They might not use the words, but their actions are telling us that there's something that's not feeling right, right? That's why they're getting reactive. So as adults, we've learned to be communicative, and we might share hey, I'm feeling a little anxious right now, or I really just need to have a minute to myself. I need to decompress. Kids don't necessarily have that language. They also might not have that cognitive ability at that point to think through those things. So one, that's where a treatment provider can come in and we can help with that. But the other component is really kind of understanding that too, that they're not trying to be disruptive. They're not trying to become dysregulated, but there's unfortunately reasons for that. So the hope is that all the things that we're sharing hopefully can be helpful in kind of trying to decrease some of those challenges.
No, I think that that's